Welcome everyone and welcome to this tutorial. So today we're going to learn how to query a REST API with APIRequest.swift. So our example project, we will list the CDN.js libraries from their official API. So here we have the response from the API, and what we are going to do is use this API to fill the content of our app. So the first thing to do is to import the repository, the package, into our app. So we're going to File, Swift Packages, Add Packages Dependency. We paste the URL of the repository. We take the default version and we add it to our projects. So you can see we have the APIRequest.swift library in our project. So now let's see what we have. We have the default app delegate where I created the main window with a table view controller in a UI navigation controller. We have a table view cell. So it's a basic table view cell with a title and a subtitle to have two lines, because we will in the first line display the name of the library with the current version, and in the second line we will display the description of the library. And we have our table view controller, which is here, so we can see the title, the large navigation bar. We register the cell, and that's all for now. So let's start. We're going to create the models of the API response. So we can see the root is, we'll just take JSON so we'll see better. So the root, we have the results containing all the items, and then we have total available to know how many items are in the results. So let's create our first model. So we create a new Swift file. Let's call it root. So to do this, we are going to create a structure named root and make it codable. This structure will represent the data we have here. For that, we'll need the results. For results, results being an array of result, no, of item. Just taking oh no, better, library, an array of library. And we are going to create this type 2. So let's create a new file, library structs library, make it codable, because if it's not codable, I don't know how to pronounce it. If it's not codable, we can't put it in our API. That's the way we're going to take from the API to put it in this. So and in the result, let's take the first, for example, we have the name, the latest, the version, the description, and the home page. So let's start with the name, latest. We're just going to create a structure representing the data we have here. So we also have the version, description, and home page. Description, string, home page, string. In here, the root, just up. So now we have the root with the library. We can take also total because it's available also. Available, it's an integer. We can use it. It can be fun to have it too. So now let's start loading the libraries. So we create a function where load the libraries from API using API request. And here we'll load the result from the API. So let's create the data itself. We'll make it, oh no, let's make it like that. And by default, well, we're going to write it like that. Root. So by default, this will be empty. Yeah, I have no initializer. So let's take results, an empty thing, and available 0. So here, what we're going to do, the number of sections. This is the well, why it's here. The number of sections we'll have in our table view cell. We only have one section. Then the number of row. It's here. This is the number of libraries we will have here. So let's take root dot results dot count. This is the number. We'll write it. Number of libraries in the array. So now let's take the part where we will fetch from the API. So our API, this is the host of our API. We're going to take the host to configure the API. So when the app starts, before creating the view, we're going to configure the API. First, we import API request, as we won't be able to configure it, and we call API configuration.current equals to, and here we create our configuration with the host of our API. So here, because our API is in HTTPS using the default port, we don't need to specify the sham and the port, but you might need to specify custom headers, port, or sham. So here we have the configuration. That's all for here. So now that our API is configured, so this will be called on launch. So when we will be here in our table view, we'll be able to, the API will be already configured. So here we can call our API. Well, first we need to import it. Import API request, and we can create a request to our API. So the method we can see here, it's a get. Now the path. You can see here the path is /libraries. The path always starts with a slash, as this can create an error. So now we need the variables for the query. So we can see here we have the question mark and then the name of the variable and the value of the variable. So the variable is name fields and the value is version description and on page. You can check, that's what we have here, version description on page, because by default the API only returns the name and the latest. So we need to add these parameters, these get parameters, to our query. So we take with name fields and value. This is here. We copy the value, version, description on page. So this is the same thing like calling this URL with this. What you can see here, it's a get with this URL and this query parameters. We won't talk about the search for now, maybe later. So now we have our API requests. What we need to do is to execute these API requests. So the type of the request, this is our root, because the data written by the API for this query is structured like the root object. We have the result and the available. Well, the available, we don't need it, so we won't put it here. And now we just add the completion handler. Always add it here. The data and the status of the request. So the first thing we do is check that data is correct, because we are relying on an online resource, so the resource can be unavailable, the user can be offline, or I don't know. So for a lot of reasons, the data could be incorrect. That's why we check if root equals data. So the data is correct. We have the root, and we can save the data in the table view. Self.root equals root. So this root of the table view is equals to the data written by the API, and then we can refresh the table view. Self.tableview dot load data. So now we can just pause the execution of the application and see that the root contains the data from our API. Well, we didn't call the load libraries. It will be better like that. Value not found. Results. Is this like that? Yeah, results. Just going to check this again. String. Array of items. What's the problem with this? What we can do to be sure to have the data correct, we put everything as optional so that we don't have a problem if the data is not available, for example. Oh yeah, we need to change. I think it's because some data can be, oh yeah, this kind of data, because it's nil, this will not work if we don't put the question mark here, because we can't put nil into the string. So, and because we change, we need to do result count, and by default 0 if there is nothing. So we can start again. And now we can see the root, well, this root is loading. This root is containing the results with the values. Well, let's take here results with all the values, with all the libraries, view latest. It's not unwrapped. Well, it's not loading. And we see we have the values, view, we have React, view React, etc. So it's loading, and it's the table view. But this won't work because we didn't implement the cells for the data. So we need to implement cells for the data. Cell for row at. So the first thing, if let cell equals table view dot decreasable cell with identifier, so this identifier is here, the one we use to register the cell. Index path, it's here as library table view cell. And if not, we just have an error because it should be the case. So then we set the data to the cell and return the cell. So for that, we get, well, we will put it here. Let lib equals root dot results index path dot row, so we get the row, the result for the row, and then so cell dot text label dot text equals, and it will be lib.name version lib.version, and for the details text label it's going to be lib.description. So here we're going to put default value, no name, and version. Let's put a dash. And so now we can check the data is loading from the API and will be displayed into the cells. We have the name, view, the version, and the description coming from the API. So now what we can do is, when we click on a cell, for now nothing is happening, what we can do is override the did select row at, keep this because this is the same, if lib for row, and let's page, well, yes, let's page equals lead.onPage, and let URL equals URL string onPage. We open the onPage with UI application shared open. Just open the URL, and if there is no onPage, we're going to show a little alert, no onPage. UI alert controller. This library has no onPage. I just need to create the alert. present the alert animated to nil, and we need to add a button to close the alert. Add action, UI alert action, title close, console, and the handler nil. So now when we click on a cell, so we'll take which one was, so for example Axios is not having a num page. So if we go to Axios, where is it? Where is Axios? I missed it. It's here. If we click on Axios, no home page. This library has no home page because the home page for Axios is nil. However, if we click, for example, on Vue, Vue is having Vue.js.org. So if we click on Vue, it's opening the Vue.js home page. We have in the data. You can go back here. So that's all for today. We learned how to fetch the data from the API and show it in a table view, in simple table view. Hope you enjoy this tutorial and see you the next time for another tutorial. Bye.